Bodybuilding. What do I know about bodybuilding? Welcome in, everyone. This is the More in the Know podcast. I am your host, Josh Morin, and on today's episode of More in the Know, I'm going to be breaking down my thoughts on bodybuilding. Not too long ago, I was at the USA's bodybuilding championship, the NPC USA championships in Las Vegas, Nevada with my father, Wayne Morin, and after returning home, I've had some time to reflect on the sport of bodybuilding, reflect on the weekend in general, and I just wanted to share some insight and value to anyone out there that's thinking about competing, that's in the sport of bodybuilding, and or is looking for bodybuilding competitions in the future. If you know or you don't know, most of every year, last year we took this last year off, but we host a bodybuilding show in Great Falls, Montana. This year in April will be the 6th year that we've done this. And the bodybuilding competition is called the Mighty Missouri Bodybuilding and Bikini Championships. And then we add a pound-for-pound deadlift competition in the intermission between the prejudging and the night show finals. Now, this is a very unique show, and it was the very first show of its kind. Now, there's been some people who have copied what we've done, but ultimately, it was the very first show that it's done what we have done, and it's been a growing show each and every single year. The show that we host every year is not NPC qualified. So if you go to our show and you win your class or you take second or third, whatever the situation is, it doesn't qualify you to step on a national stage. And so what I want to break down today is, what does it mean to be on a national stage? What does it mean to be NPC qualified? And what did I see at the nationals? So first and foremost, just talking about our bodybuilding show in April, the big decision to not make it NPC is a few different things. Number one is cost. You have to have a NPC card to participate in NPC affiliated events. So the NPC card is $100+. And then also too, if you compete in an NPC event, that event specifically has to have judges flown in that are under the NPC. So this all adds a lot of extra cost. So typically what you see per category of you signing up for a bodybuilding competition is anywhere between $200 to $300 per category. So if you want to compete in 2 to 3 categories, that's $600, $700, $800 plus your NPC card, plus your travel, plus everything that's involved in getting you to the big show for 30 to 90 seconds of you walking across the stage. And the reality is very, very small percentage of people who become NPC qualified actually go to the national stage. And then those who go to a national stage that compete, that then become either in the top 10 in the nation and or earn their IFB Pro card is like almost zero. I mean, Montana, had 0 people to get their Pro card this year at the USAs. Montana had zero people receive their IFBB Pro card at the USAs this year. We had a competitor, Allie Wergen, who is a top bikini competitor in the state of Montana. She wins the overall shows, she wins the regional shows, and she took 6th place at the USAs this year. 6th place. She went down to Florida for the Florida Nationals. She took 7th, I believe, down there. She's a top competitor in the state of Montana, and she still didn't get her pro card. Now, I know that that's still a dream, goal, and aspiration of hers, but that just goes to show you how competitive it truly is on the national stage and in the national level. So if you're a competitor out there and you see that it's not NPC qualified, that doesn't mean that it's not a quality show. One thing that I can say about our bodybuilding show in April is everybody walks away with a very tight-knit feeling. Everybody walks away with a very good feeling about the show because it's very authentic. It's an intimate show. With it being a smaller show, you have more time on stage. You're not being put through the ringer like a cattle or a cow or a sheep. You have some time to actually speak with the judges. At these big NPC shows at the Nationals, you have to email the judges, and then good luck if you're actually going to get solid feedback or not. Our judges are right there when the show's over. You can walk right up to them, ask them all sorts of different questions, exchange information. It's a very intimate show for beginners as well as veterans looking to really take their bodybuilding to the next level, whether it be posing, presentation, their dieting, their training, whatever questions that you have for our qualified judges that you can actually ask them right on the spot. So that's what really separates us from an NPC affiliated show. And let's just be honest with each other. This NPC nationally qualified is just a situation for clout on Instagram and social media. It's so you can throw it into your Instagram bio. But the fact of the matter is just because you're NPC qualified doesn't mean you actually belong on a national stage. And just seeing where the sport is going, I mean, the level of competition that I've seen at the USAs this last year, or this a couple weekends ago, I mean, was insane. I mean, we would think that Wergen definitely was qualified to be an IFBB pro, but whatever they're looking for, and that's what I'm going to break down potentially here in a second. But whatever the judging criteria is so, I mean, there's no consistency in the judging criteria, to be honest with you. And everybody who has a big coach, it's very political. The sport is very, very political. Our show is not political at all. You come, you bring what you got, you bring your best, and you're going to earn what you receive, not based off of who your coach is, but based off the physique and the presentation and level of conditioning that you brought to our stage. So that's really what separates us. So what did I see this last weekend? Well, I've been around the bodybuilding industry my entire life. My mother was a very competitive women's female bodybuilder in the 90s. Okay, so in the 90s, all there was female bodybuilding. Now there's women's figure, women's bikini, women's physique, women's wellness, and women's bodybuilding. There's 5 categories now, and 5 different categories. They're giving out over 100 IFBB pro cards. Back in the day, when you were a female bodybuilder, you had to win the overall at the USAs to get your pro card. Now you can place first or second and receive a IFBB pro card. I mean, so now they're just handing these things out like candy. And so what I've seen over the course of the last 15, 20 years of my life of really being aware of what's going on in this bodybuilding spectrum is this. Bodybuilding within itself has seen a decline. So a decline in terms of traditional bodybuilding. So what has the sport done? Well, they opened up more divisions. What this was smart to get more people involved. So they opened up the figure division. They opened up bikini. Now they have different divisions for men, classic physique, men's physique. I mean, so they've opened up different divisions for people to participate, which will help the sport grow. And I agree with that to an extent. But what I've seen is there's so much disparity in the judging criteria that guys that are in men's physique are essentially classic physique competitors with board shorts on. And they all look the same. I mean, they're all carbon copies of one another. And I see this in the sport of bikini as well. And so first breaking down the women's side of things. First and foremost, there's 1 million women that are in bikini. And not to take anything away from the women that are in bikini, but they're just handing out pro cards because here's the facts about a pro card. Every pro card that they hand out is $600 per year to maintain your IFBB pro status. So if you hand out 100 pro cards to females, even if they're not going to go and do any pro stage, because once you receive your IFBB pro card, that's it. You can't compete at any more amateur level shows. All that you can compete now is at the next level of shows, which is the pro league. Now, because you're an NPC IFBB professional. So you can't do any of these amateur shows now that you have your IFBB pro card, and you have to maintain that pro status by paying $600 yearly. Well, majority of the people never go and actually compete on that next level and or even have success on that next level. I mean, the percentage of people is very, very minute and small. But what a great way to generate an extra $60,000 in one weekend by just handing out pro cards like candy to the top 2 in every single female class. That's exactly what they've done. They've just created a monopoly and it's the whole sport now is revolved around women's bikini. Women's bodybuilding is pretty much dead, in my opinion. But women's bikini, I mean, that's the whole bulk of the show. So they saw where their money is, their cash cow, and they wanted to push their cash cow as much as possible. So what better way than just handing out 2 pro cards with 8 different divisions? I mean, that's insane to me. We're talking 20 women just handing out pro cards for. I mean, not that saying that their hard work isn't deserving to be an IFBB pro, but man, I mean, what is the the allure anymore. I mean, it doesn't even have that sense of accomplishment anymore that it used to have. I mean, back in the day when there was only one or two per not class, but per category, pro cards given out. I mean, you were the top of the top. Now, I understand in order for the sport to grow, these are things that they've had to do, but ultimately, I just feel like they've saturated the IFBB pro market. Now, anybody and everybody can pretty much become an IFBB pro if you're a female and are in shape. Now, I say that with the utmost respect to everybody who's a pro and who competes in the sport of bodybuilding. I'm just saying that from my experience, that it's just the novelty and the nobility of being an IFBB pro. For me to look at somebody now it's just lowered over the last few years, just seeing what the IFBB has done. It's not the competitor's fault. And I see what they're doing to generate as much income as possible as a federation, and that's exactly what they're doing. But I also believe that they're robbing competitors of novelty, number one, and I know everybody wants to become an IFBB pro, but ultimately at the end of the day, when you become an IFBB pro, what's next for you? Unless you're utilizing that to traject your fitness, to traject your gym, or increase your influence and affluence within the spectrum, then in reality, you're just another fish. You're just a tiny fish in a big pond. I mean, that next level to then go step on the Olympia stage, I mean, it's just a very minute number of people who actually go to that next level, and rather use the IFBB Pro to leverage your own success, which I can understand. And I suggest, if you are an IFBB Pro, that you utilize this, because the fact of the matter is you're probably not going to make any money as an actual pro, like just competing itself, unless you are the elite of the elite. So then it's insane, because then they hold the men's bodybuilding for the very last. Now, the men's bodybuilding used to be the whole bulk of the show. I mean, that used to be what the sport of bodybuilding was. But it's crazy to me to see these 260, 270 pounds of muscle, and they're only giving out one pro card per men's bodybuilding division. Comparatively to the women's bikini, they're giving out two. Now, I'm not going to, this is with no disrespect, but women's bikini versus a man that's 260, 270 pounds of muscle at 5-6% body fat, that is not the same sport. That is definitely not the same sport. This is a beauty pageant, and this is actual bodybuilding. I'm going to be honest with you. But to be 250, 260 pounds in the super heavyweight division at 5 or 6%, I mean, you are an anomaly. I mean, you are a freak of nature. I mean, this is the smallest percentage of the world of people who actually look like this. To be honest with you, there's a lot of women who look like this over here, and there's no men that look like this over here. And there's such a disparity between the two. And on one side, they're giving away pro cards like they're candy. On the other side, they're only giving away one per division. This is absolutely asinine. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, these aren't even the two same sports. But the reason why that they're doing this is to create cash flow, money. The show was pretty much over when the women were done, because the whole place at the USAs in Las Vegas, the convention center, was flooded by the women, and nobody was watching the fucking men because they were the last ones on the stage. I understand it's not the driver of the attendance. I know it's not the driver of the fan base, etc. I mean, they were so disrespectful after when the men were up there. I mean, it was so loud. They even turned the music down so all the women that just got done could make sure that they talk and chat and take photos. I mean, it was almost like the show was over, but there were still men going on the stage. It was very interesting to see, but it wasn't interesting to see because I understand what's going on within the sport of bodybuilding, and that the sport of bodybuilding is not the sport of bodybuilding. It is the bikini sport. It's to push as many numbers as possible within the sport of bikini. That's it. I mean, that's really it. And it was also crazy is that they were giving women's physique competitors top 2 placements, and in some of those classes, there was only 3 fucking people. There's only 3 competitors, and they're giving women top 2 because they want to push women's physique as well. But in the men's, they're only giving away 1 pro card per division. I mean, this is just crazy to me. I mean, there's so much disparity within the sport that honestly they're wanting to grow these different categories. But in some of these classes, I mean, there's 15 qualified men, and the top 5 of them could then go to the pro league and compete, and a handful of them are ready for the next level in the next 2 to 3 years, but they took second place because there was another freak in their division and they don't even get their pro card. Crazy, man. I mean, at the end of the day, it is what it is, and I understand what the sport is wanting to promote and push, and it's really ultimately money. This doesn't take away from you being an IFBB pro or a bikini competitor. We support all competitors in the state of in the sport of bodybuilding, but ultimately, this is just something that I've been thinking of, and if I'm the bad guy for saying all this, I'm just bringing truth and light to the situation. I'm not quite sure who speaks about all this openly. I don't follow a lot of bodybuilding forums. We're really not a bodybuilding company ourselves, but ultimately at the end of the day, I just wanted to offer some insight revolving the sport of bodybuilding. We host a bodybuilding show, and we love our female competitors. Our show is also addictive of our female competitor base. I'm just bringing light to what's happening on the macro. Like I said, this isn't the competitor's fault, but bikini and super heavyweight and heavyweight men's bodybuilding are completely two different sports. And ultimately, there's got to be some change other than the fact of just creating money and cash flow for the IFBB and the NPC. That's what I'm seeing, is they're just so money hungry that they're not actually rewarding what the sport was born and created and purposed to be and intended to be. And now they're just wanting to create as much money and as cash flow into their pockets as possible. So let me know if you agree with this content. Like, comment, subscribe to this channel. Hey, you know what? Maybe I know a little bit about bodybuilding. Maybe I don't, because I've never been on the stage, but I just wanted to give an insider's perspective as to what I feel about the USAs and beyond. So with that being said, that concludes today's podcast. I love you all, and thank you for tuning in to More in the Know podcast.